Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking on a genuinely massive, world-altering event, World War I. Our goal here is to explain it easily by breaking down this incredibly complex conflict into a logical, step-by-step chain of cause and effect. By the end of this, you'll see exactly how the globe went from a tense, fragile peace to a totally all-consuming war. Here's our roadmap to make sense of it all today. First, a spark ignites Europe. Second, a truly global conflict. Third, why America joined in. Fourth, the poetry of pity. And finally, a changed world. Let's get right into it. Section 1. A spark ignites Europe. You know, the outbreak of the war wasn't just some sudden, random event. For decades leading up to 1914, European powers were kind of walking a tightrope, maintaining this really delicate balance of power. But to explain it easily, there were three main ingredients that basically turned Europe into a giant powder keg. First up, we've got fresh outbursts of imperialism. Nations were literally treating international relations like a battle for survival, aggressively grabbing up territories across Africa and Asia. Second, you have the rapid rise of the German Empire in Central Europe. This completely terrified its neighbors and pushed everyone into this tangled paranoid web of military alliances. And third, growing nationalism. National groups stuck inside these older empires were loudly demanding self-determination. They wanted independence. So as you can see, the stage is totally set for a disaster. And that powder keg, well, it finally blew during what historians call the July Crisis. The actual fatal spark happened on June 28, 1914, when a Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, right in Sarajevo. Because of that tangled web of alliances we just talked about, this assassination triggered a rapid-fire, almost linear sequence of events. It's like dominoes falling. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and declared war on July 28th. Then, Russia mobilized its army to defend Serbia. Right after that, in early August, Germany declared war on Russia and France, and they quickly invaded Belgium. Naturally, that pulled the United Kingdom right into the fray. Just like that, within a matter of weeks, the dominoes had completely fallen over. Section 2. A truly global conflict. So what started as a highly localized crisis in the Balkans just snowballed, spreading like wildfire far beyond European borders. Initially, Germany's strategy in 1914 was to quickly knock out France, but their advance hit a literal wall by September. The conflict then froze into something totally unprecedented, a nearly continuous, muddy line of fortified trenches stretching all the way from the English Channel down to Switzerland. This became the infamous Western Front. What we're seeing here is old-school military tactics violently colliding with devastating new technology. We are talking about the very first large-scale use of machine guns, heavy artillery, early aircraft, armored tanks, and, terrifyingly, chemical weapons. This new machinery of war made gaining even a few feet of ground incredibly difficult and unbelievably deadly. But listen, the trenches of Europe are really only part of the story. The sheer scale of this war was immense. The Ottoman Empire jumped into the fray, teaming up with Germany and Austria-Hungary, a group known as the Central Powers. Meanwhile, you had Japan and Italy joining the Allies. What this meant was the conflict wasn't just contained to Europe anymore. It exploded outward. It brought devastating military campaigns into the Middle East, across Africa, and deep into the Asia-Pacific. It was, in the truest, most literal sense of the term, a world war. Section 3. Why America joined in. Now, for years, the United States maintained a super strict policy of neutrality. They were basically just watching this nightmare unfold from across the Atlantic. So you might be wondering, what finally pulled America in? Well, to explain it easily, it really just comes down to two absolutely undeniable triggers that made continued American neutrality totally impossible. Let's break down those two triggers. Step 1 was unrestricted submarine warfare. Back in 1916, Germany made this thing called the Sussex Pledge, basically promising they wouldn't attack passenger ships without giving a warning first. But fast forward to January 1917, and Germany is getting desperate to defeat Great Britain, so they completely reverse course and resume unrestricted submarine attacks on all shipping. And yes, that included American merchant ships. They totally ripped up their pledge. Step 2, the Zimmermann telegram. This is wild. In January 1917, British intelligence intercepted and decoded a top-secret message from the German foreign minister, sent to Mexico. Germany was literally trying to entice Mexico into an alliance against the U.S., promising to help them win back territory they'd lost in the Mexican-American War. The British, of course, handed this intercepted telegram right over to President Woodrow Wilson, and the American press wasted no time publishing it for the whole country to see. Now, while the Zimmermann telegram absolutely shocked the nation, it was actually Germany's resumption of those submarine attacks that became the primary motivation for going to war. German submarines were actively sinking American ships and killing U.S. citizens. They were basically proving they had zero interest in a peaceful resolution. These very real, undeniable threats completely shifted U.S. public opinion overnight. Consequently, on April 2, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson went straight before Congress to ask for a formal declaration of war against Germany, which, as you can guess, Congress quickly granted. Section 4. The Poetry of Pity. Let's shift gears for a minute. Moving from these massive political and military maneuvers down to the deeply personal level, we can really start to grasp the true psychological cost of the war by looking at the era's dramatic cultural shift. Early on, going off to fight was generally seen as this noble duty, like a glorious adventure. You can totally see this in Rupert Brooke's poem, The Soldier. It was written as this highly romantic, patriotic sonnet that basically celebrates sacrificing your life for England. But fast forward just a couple of years into the absolute meat grinder of the trenches, and the poetry changes completely. Soldiers who were actually writing from the front lines, guys like Wilfred Owen in his famous poem Dulce et Decorum Est, just completely stripped away all that fake glory. Instead, they wrote about the literal gore, the butchery, the horrific gas attacks, and the agonizing, senseless purposelessness of the slaughter. There's this incredibly powerful quote from a draft preface by Wilfred Owen. He wrote, "My subject is war and the pity of war. The poetry is in the pity. All a poet can do today is warn." Think about that. These soldiers turned poets used their own first-hand waking nightmares to completely shatter those old 19th century illusions of noble combat. They were literally trying to warn future generations, leaving behind this heavy emotional anchor that helps us, even today, understand the profound disillusionment felt by the people who actually survived it. In fact, academic analysis of this specific era really highlights how this unprecedented devastation ushered in a completely new modernist literary landscape. The war inflicted these massive, deep psychological wounds, leaving behind what felt like both a physical and a metaphysical wasteland all across Europe. This feeling is incredibly famously depicted by post-war poets like T.S. Eliot in his masterpiece, The Wasteland. Basically, all the old liberal values and romantic traditions, they were gone, replaced by these fragmented narratives, stark realism, and a really deep existential sense of spiritual decay. Section 5. A Changed World. When the guns finally fell silent and the armistice took effect on November 11, 1918, the world was left to tally up a truly staggering cost. Somewhere between 15 to 22 million total deaths. That's a number so huge it's almost hard to wrap your head around. This estimate includes horrific mass civilian casualties, war crimes, and genocides. It really makes the sheer scale of the war's human cost visceral and just entirely unforgettable. To this day, it remains one of the deadliest single conflicts in all of human history. So, what did this post-war world actually look like? Well, the aftermath brought about these incredibly far-reaching cultural, economic, and social changes. Get this, 4 mighty empires totally collapsed under the weight of the conflict. Poof, gone. Old countries were completely abolished, and the map of Europe and the Middle East was frantically redrawn with brand new borders and new nations. But amidst all that ruin, there was also a profound political transformation happening. The war massively accelerated the shift toward electoral democracies. For the very first time in history, we actually saw the introduction of near-universal suffrage, meaning the right to vote, in the principal nations involved in the conflict. We're talking about places like the Weimar Republic in Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States finally expanding voting rights. I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought here. Understanding this chain reaction, how we got from that one single spark in Sarajevo to a completely transformed, grieving globe, is absolutely crucial. But as you look at the shattered, rearranged pieces of this new world, you really have to wonder, did this so-called war to end all wars truly resolve the deep underlying tensions we talked about at the very beginning? Or did it merely hit pause, laying down a highly unstable foundation for the future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.